The FIA Formula 3 European Championship heads to Austria this weekend. For the first time this year, it hooks up with the DTM, and we're at the Red Bull Ring for 3 races. Fingers crossed, all of which will run in the sunshine. A far cry from the weather conditions that blighted the Sunday, at least, of last year's trip to Austria. They had both qualifying sessions plus free practice yesterday, and so we're good for 3 races with slightly jumbled grids in what's been a very competitive start to the season. We've had 7 different winners. We've had a real spread of results as well, and Lance Stroll is the man who's had a victory and comes here as the championship leader. But for the first time, Callum Ilott is the man who lines up on pole position for the first race of the weekend. And here in the shadow of the Red Bull itself, it's a great circuit for the drivers. It's one they really enjoy because it has a great mix of fast bits, of undulation, overtaking opportunities. You can slipstream around here as well, and it promises this first race to be very lively indeed. David Addison and Dave Richardson with you, looking down onto the grid. The British driver Callum Ilott, last year in Red Bull colours. Not anymore, dropped from the programme, but arguably going better as a result of it. He now is for Van Amersfoort Racing. And Callum, who earlier on in the year scored his maiden victory, going back to the Paul Ricard weekend, starts from pole position for the first time. He was good in qualifying yesterday, but in fairness, pole position came about because this man, Maximilian Günther, who's been the qualifying king, 5 pole positions, it would have been 6, but he had his best lap time taken away for exceeding track limits. Please yawn with your mouths closed, because track limits remains the perennial problem, Dave Richardson, when we come to modern-day Formula 1 venues.
Yeah, it does, and we're expecting it to be a bit of an issue here. We've already seen that through the qualifying sessions, haven't we? Now, you made the point, track conditions very, very different to what was experienced here last year. And what I find absolutely extraordinary is we've had 3 rounds of the championship, and this is only the first hookup with DTM, which is most unusual.
That's right. I mean, one of the prerequisites this year has been that because the championship has the FIA tag, it goes to some other FIA events like World Touring Cars, so that's why it was at Paul Ricard and the Hungaroring. Po is the regular now Formula 3 European slot for the Po Grand Prix. Alessio Lorandi was the winner of that. That was only a week ago. Looking down onto the grid, you're seeing Lance Stroll there, who will line up at 4th, and for 5th on the grid is Joel Eriksson, the next of the Super Swedes to come along. But for many of the teams, you know what damage is like at Po. They've had less than a week to load them up, get them here, rebuild, prepare, and be out on track Friday morning for free practice.
It's the very point that I was going to make, is if there was pressure on the drivers, my goodness, isn't there pressure on the teams? Because in the space, as you say, of just a week, completely changed the setup. This is an altogether different track to that of the Po Grand Prix, and they've had to get here before they even start thinking about the setup, haven't they?
Yeah, and any repair work, you don't go back to the factory and do. You have to do it on the road, effectively.
Yes.
Now, George Russell, you're looking down at, he's had a victory this year. He was a winner at Silverstone last year in the opening weekend, but it was a long time before the next one, and it came early on in the season. He drives for the High-Tech team, and High-Tech, a familiar name in Formula 3 parlance, coming back into the championship this season full-time. It arrived at the back end of last year, but now with Good and Pedro Piquet in the car, dressed up to look like his father's Parmalat Brabham. If you have a long memory, you'll recognise the livery. The crash helmet is the same. There was talk of a second Piquet, elder brother, Nelson being at Po. That didn't happen. He's due to do Macau, but Pedro getting quicker and quicker and quicker all the time. And for this race, he lines up 9th on the grid, and then you've got Mikkel Jensen, who is the next driver into position. Mikkel is another who lost out, not in qualifying, but sorry, not for yellow flag or track limits, but for crossing the white line. So he's got a 3-place grid drop. That's what I'm trying to get to. So it wasn't for running off the circuit. It was kind of running onto it a bit too soon, perversely, by crossing the pit exit white line. Ralph Aaron, winner, the Estonian, he's had a victory as well this year. So it's been a really jumble mix, as I say. And there you've got number 2, Nick Cassidy, 5th in the championship. And great things were expected of Nick, but so far 4 second places are the cap, no victories, and that's a real surprise because we know how good he is. He's the reigning Japanese champion and came into the Prema Power Team squad at the end of last year, but the results just haven't come. There was a talk of some team orders going on at the start of the season where it looked as though he didn't put up much of a defence when he was overtaken for the race lead, but we know that Nick Cassidy can deliver, but he wasn't here last year for this equivalent meeting. He came to Prema really from Portimao onwards, but we'll see how he fares for the remainder of the weekend. But the times in qualifying weren't all that sparkling from him. He's 10th on the grid for this. Was actually the 12th best lap time, but a few grid drops and things have shuffled the order accordingly. But 12th and 15th out of the second session. Not stellar either. So that is looking down onto the circuit from turn 2, the Remus corner. It's a long, long climb up the hill. And anticipate, because so much of the lap is on full throttle, and with the climb, the fuel load coming down does make a big difference. Even though the tyres go off, what you lose through the tyres is compensated for by the fact that the fuel is coming down. And so in qualifying, normally you find that the best laps are set round about lap 4, lap 5 of the session.
Right.
Yesterday, they were still being done right towards the very end because the gain with a lighter fuel load was outweighing the loss of the tyre. And it could well be that you find people getting quicker and quicker as the race goes on. So it doesn't necessarily follow that it'll get into the same plateau that at some circuits it might do. We shall see. That's David Beckman, who's graduated from the German F4 Championship. He joined in the series at Po a week ago and was in the wars a little bit, but here he has had a couple of good qualifying efforts, that's for sure, lining up for the subsequent races, nicely placed.
Another graduate, of course, from the ADAC Formula 4 is Harrison Newey. He'll be going from P11. He's had a sort of a fairly mixed season thus far.
Yes, and he's done quite a lot of miles, hasn't he, in junior single-seaters, but he's gone from, like Ralph Aaron, as you say, German F4 to a Formula 3 car. And for some drivers it works. They can get the hat on with that quite quickly. Joel Ericsson's another example of that.
Yes.
Others do a year or two in Formula Renault, so there's like that sort of middle period of 2-litre slicks and wings. But in a sense, everybody now is trying to jump straight into this to be the next Verstappen.
Yeah, well, of course, what a benchmark he has proved to be.
Yes.
But what I was going to go on to say was some have proved that you can jump from that German F4 into Formula 3. Harrison perhaps maybe would have benefited from another season in that.
Maybe, or a Formula Renault year or equivalent,
Yes.
Well, we'll see how he fares in this. The car's being released onto the final warming up lap. It's a chance to get some warmth into the Hankook tyres. And if you have a look at the clock at the top of the screen, just to highlight another of the changes for this year, it's not a number of laps or 35 minutes, which used to be the case. It is now 33 minutes plus 1 lap. So it takes away the vagaries, perhaps, of the time slot, but it also means that the officials can let people know for definite when it's going to be the last lap of the race, and it's not affected if you have a safety car either. So there's a long, long climb up towards turn 2 through the Remus right-hander, and this is a part of the circuit where you can get it wrong. If you make a dive up the inside and it doesn't pay off, you can clatter into somebody, or if you come up too rapidly, you can run out wide, and that then compromises your exit for this long, fast run all the way down to turn 3, the Rauch right-hander. Callum Eilert on pole position for this race, ahead of Maximilian Günther. Ben Barnicoat, who's had 2 wins this year, lines up third ahead of championship leader Lance Stroll. Then Joel Eriksson from George Russell, Pedro Piquet, Mikael Jensen, Ralph Aaron and Nick Cassidy round out the top 10. Harry Newey is 11th ahead of David Beckman. Nico Kari, who's been up and down the order this year, he starts 13th ahead of Guan Yu Zhao. Then Sergio Sette Camara, he's got a grid drop for causing a collision at Po, which was a heck of a collision. There were bits of car everywhere. He will line up just ahead of Ryan Tita. Then it's Antoine Hubert and Alessio Lorandi, the Po winner, a long way back, 18th. 19th Arjun Maini ahead of Nikita Mazepin. Then Wairun Tan, who joins the championship this weekend, the Malaysian for Carlin. And it is Peter Lee who will start from the back of the grid, and he also got a 3-place grid drop by dint of crossing the pit exit line. That's the lap, 4.362 kilometres, and you can see broken into the 3 sectors, one on the long climb up the hill, where you puff and pant, even in a car, never mind on foot when you get to the top of it. Then you plunge downhill and work your way through towards the end of the lap, where you've got the double apex, long, long right, Rindt, the first bit, named after Austria's first, and indeed the sport's only posthumous world champion, and then into the Red Bull Mobile curve at the end of the lap.
And what we don't appreciate, perhaps, on the TV screen as much as you've said, as you pant as you walk up towards the Remus turn, is just how undulating and up and down this circuit really, really is. The speed that is scrubbed off, or tried to be scrubbed off, as you take that first right-hander, if you like, which is still climbing as you exit the turn, isn't it? It's a remarkable circuit, and it's one that we love and the drivers love too.
People that go back a long way say it's horrible.
Yourself.
Thank you so much. Even there are some people older than me, I promise you, and they will say, no, it's not what it was, because the older Strykering with the Hellerlich chicane going up through the first sequence of corners, that was a proper man's track. But if you put it into the modern age, it's a brilliant circuit. It's got everything, and it's a fantastic facility, and we're about to go racing for the first of 3 races of the weekend in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Callum Eilert from pole position then on the outside of the 1x1 staggered grid. Green flag shown at the back to say that everybody is back from the warming up lap. The drivers now look towards the lighting gantry. 4 red lights are on, 5 when the lights go out. We are racing now. Bit of creeping from Piquet, but he gets away smartly enough, and he might cop a penalty for that, and Eilert converts pole into the lead with Max Günther on the inside. Lance Stroll moves across to defend from Ben Barnicoat. He's got 2 wheels up on the curb. He's going to run out way wide. Barnicoat in the Racing Steps Foundation car. There are others going even wider, very nearly having to pay to get back in as they run now up towards Remus for the first time. Race leaders are side by side. Eilert versus Gunter. Callum Eilert will have the inside line going up towards turn 2. Max Gunter on the outside line.
Whoa.
The big lock up from Ben Barnicoat, and he's been given a shove. That's why, because right into the back of him there, by the look of it, had got Joel Eriksson, and that causes mayhem because you've got cars out wide and you've got a drama in the middle of the road with 3 blocking the road. Ryan Tvita is one of them. Up on 2 wheels is Wyron Tam, and there's a 3rd car underneath all of that, and that may well be a safety car because I can't imagine all 3 are going to get out of the way. So, out of Rauk they go. There's more strife. There's their Sergio Setting camera. I think that was going into the gravel. We've got yellows at turn 2. Back to the leader. It's still Callum Eilert ahead of Max Gunter.
Safety car is deployed.
Quelle surprise, as we say in Austria. So the safety car on track, and that means that at the end of the lap there's going to be no overtaking, and that's the reason for it. It was Wyron Tan. Who was underneath? Arjun Maini. Yes. Right.
So the Wyron Tan car then vaulted. Well, we'll see that again now in replay.
So Tvita spins, Maini hits
Whoa.
him, and Wyron Tan uses him as a ramp.
Bit of a fulcrum there, isn't it?
Absolutely right, or a seesaw, at least,
whichever.
for our younger viewer. Right, Tvita got a tap.
Yeah, who tapped him?
It was either Hubert or Newey, I think, looking at the livery, I fear. But Arjun Maini, the rather innocent victim in all of that. And suddenly Wyron Tam's first race in the championship came to a rather elevated end. Yes. Tvita gets away with all the damage, and others trudge away. And Ben Barnicoat has come into the pit lane with what looks like a punctured tyre. Remember I said that somebody got into the back of him at turn 2? Well, I think it's done a tyre. So in a funny way, he kind of benefits by the safety car because hopefully he can stay on the lead lap. He's got a mountain to climb in terms of overtaking to get back into the top 10.
But he will be on the same lap.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Because the pace of the race will be slowed right down.
Tvita is in.
Okay, new nose.
Yeah.
That car has no nose. How does it smell? Horrible. Round Remus and round the debris of what's left of Arjun Maini's car they come. So we had a rather spectacular accident here last year in the Grand Prix, didn't we? Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen, and Formula 3 trying to emulate that. But that was unfortunate to say the least. But turn 2 has always been a pinch point, and there were 2 separate incidents, weren't there? There was one going on with Barnicoat being given a push and forced out wide, and then there was all the other drama going on behind. Let's have a look at the replay of the start. Piquet, I still think, crept a little bit out of that, but there's more almost wheel banging in the background as Tvita moves across on camera, but they managed to avoid contact. Have a look at Barnicoat here because he runs out wide. Rest of the pack funnels through, and inevitably those towards the back get wider and wider and wider from a different angle. There you can see cars running wide over the curb. And Ben Barnicoat gives a squeeze, doesn't he, to what I'm sure is Joel Eriksson. 2 wheels on the grass, almost 4, gets back on again. But have a look now at the 4th place pack up towards turn 2. Eriksson into the back of Barnicoat. Just muscles him out wide, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
And this is all the drama at the back. Wyron Tan, in fairness, suddenly came across an incident. Nowhere to go. Tvita spins, Maini hits him, bonk, bang, up the back. That's Wyron Tan, whose view of Austria changes quite considerably, staring at the heavens. Right, the leaders have gone by, and Ben Barnicoat did get out of the pit lane.
Now, the Pedro Piquet creeping that you were talking about,
yes,
is his start. He's under investigation. So, everyone does listen to you, don't they?
Sometimes. And we're getting a replay here of the recovery operation, so we can't be that far off.
No.
The safety car being in this lap, in fact, it's confirmed on the screen, so we're good to go racing now. Who's that? Joel Eriksson.
Yes.
Right. Well, that kind of offers more evidence to the fact that he did get in the back with Barnicoat. Yes. Right. And is he going to stay on the lead lap? Should be able to. I wonder whether that's going to be looked at, the contact between the 2 of them. So Ryan Tvita has just gone across the line, and he's about to gain a place by dint of Joel Eriksson having had to pit. We're going to go back to racing this time. All of these laps count then within the 33 plus a lap. And out of the pit lane will go Joel Eriksson, so he can now play catch-up and get onto the tail of the train. And just while you look at that shot, have a look left. There's the pit exit white line, and that's what you're not allowed to cut. Different race directors will tell you that, in their opinion, it will be a barrier. If you drive into a barrier, you're out of the race. If you drive over the white line, you're going to be out of the race. And in qualifying, you get your best lap time or a grid drop. And in this, there could be a penalty as well. But there, Joel Eriksson does it properly. Drivers have learnt their lesson over the weekend. So the BMW safety car with Volkswagen and Mercedes power behind it, because they're the bulk of the engine suppliers, along with the 3-volt engine in the T-Sport car, but the Arjun Maimi is now parked by the side of the road. We are ready to go racing once more. Safety car will come in at the end of the lap, and it is Callum Eilert then looking for a second win of the year, who will turn the field now through the right-hander of Rindt, then down towards the Red Bull Mobile curve. Piquet runs wide, so not only is he under investigation, but he also squanders some of the time that he's got in hand there by running out wide and dropping off the back of the train of cars ahead of him. We're racing once more. Eilert leads Gunter, leads Stroll, leads Mikkel Jensen. So Jensen has been the real beneficiary from the dramas on the first lap. 8th he started and 4th he runs. Okay, so Stroll then P3, and as you rightly say, Mikkel Jensen right behind in P4. The run up to Remus turn now. And the battle's on for 6th, isn't it, there in the background, where you've got Nick Cassidy losing out because at the inside David Beckman tried to go and others run out wide as ever. That is a pinch point. Ben Barnicoat's on the back of that queue as well, but the leading quartet then, Eilert, Gunter, Stroll, Jensen getting away. Piquet runs 5th, and then George Russell hanging on to his 6th spot, but only just as Nick Cassidy comes up round the outside of him. They've got to be careful because David Beckman's trying to get in on the act as well in the orange Book of Motorsport car behind. Dust was kicked up, one car slows coming downhill, and now Stroll up the inside to go second at the expense of Gunter, turning their way down through Pirelli. Up into second place goes the championship leader, flicks across to get all of the width of the road then to go into the next corner down at the bottom of the hill through Wurth and now up towards Rindt. This is lap number 4 and Callum Eilert leads, but Lance Stroll, good overtake, up into second place. Question is now, can he bring down the gap to the leader? Well, of course, whilst they were battling, that was playing into the hands of Callum Eilert, who was able to get up the road a little bit, but the margin last time around was only 4/10, and now Stroll will have Callum Eilert very much in the target sights. It's across the timing line now. The margin between Eilert and Lance Stroll was 1.2. So Lance Stroll then will definitely be on a charge towards Callum Eilert. Nelson Piquet looks on. Callum Eilert and Maximilian Gunter under investigation for an incident. It's going to be reported to the stewards. And what news of Piquet, Dave? Drive-through penalty for jumping the start, as indeed you alluded may be looked into. Right, that's Sergio Sette Camara going the wrong way, coming out of turn 1. Just trying to work out what the incident is between Eilert and Gunter. Anyway, that's Ben Barnicoat getting up on the inside, and Camara then ran wide over the curb, back overtakes, front round he goes. So Sergio Sette Camara in strife. He has had a second place as his best of the year thus far, but it ain't going to be emulated here, as now Maximilian Gunter is dropping down the order. Now, let's have a close look at this. Has he got some damage, a legacy of the opening lap? Because the car is fading. He's lost 2 places, and we know that Gunter is quick, but look at the gap that Eilert has got over the opposition, and Gunter has gone from 2nd down to 4th. Now, could it have been that on the opening lap there was a little brush between them and it's affected the front wing on the car, which would affect the aero accordingly? Well, there's something, isn't there? You're right. Well, I'm racking my brains. It may have been that I blinked and didn't see it, but as to what happened between Eilert and Gunter on that opening lap. Anyway, for the moment, Callum Eilert leads the way. Pedro Piquet's 5th, which is the best he's run all year, is about to be unravelled because of the jump start. I mean, he didn't gain much out of it, but he was out of position. He had crept. Callum Eilert has increased the margin by another 3/10, so he's driving a great race at the moment. And there you've got another battle going on between George Russell and Nick Cassidy, a bit lower down, but George Russell staying ahead for his 6th place at the moment. Full marks to David Beckman in 8th place, because although he's raced here in F4, he's very new to Formula 3, only his 2nd meeting, and he's up against some more experienced drivers as again the challenge is on. Look, coming up the hill, on the inside is Russell, on the outside is Cassidy. They go wheel to wheel into the corner, but George Russell's got the tighter, shorter inside line, and he comes out ahead. Nose to tail they run. So George Russell 2 years ago, the BRDC's F4 champion. The reigning Japanese champion is Nick Cassidy in a Formula 3 car. He's got his nose in front. Can he cut across? Yes, he can. Job done. Good move that by Nick Cassidy on the run down the hill. That was started really on the exit of that Remus turn 2, wasn't it? Yeah. Brilliant move. And now look, Russell straight away comes under attack because David Beckman is there behind him, and actually Harry Newey is in 9th spot behind them in the Van Amersfoort car, going strongly here, Harrison Newey, running in the points, which is good to see. 17th equal in the championship at the moment, and his best of the year has been a 9th. He could be emulating that as the leaders work their way towards us. Now Piquet's got 3 laps in which to serve this drive-through. Is he going to come in this time? Yes. Yes, he is. Backs out of it, doesn't he? Coming out of Rindt into the pit lane he comes, so it's a drive-through penalty. Where will that bring him back into the mix is the next question. Dad's not overly impressed by that. They will be talking to post-race. Have a look at it again. 5 red lights are on, and there you can see PK does move forward over the grid line.
Good spot by you.
So that's the reason for the penalty. No real argument when you look at the evidence like that, is there? So he gets away and actually lost on the start anyway. By creeping, he then had to sort of stop. He's lost the revs. So we are currently on lap 7. We've got 22.5 minutes plus a lap still to run. Callum Eilert, as Dave Richardson has been telling you, is now 1.6 seconds up on Lance Stroll. The gap has been increasing. And then in 3rd place is Mikkel Jensen. Down to 4th has gone Günther. Up to 5th is Cassidy. 6th is Russell. 7th is Beckman. 8th is Newey. 9th is Ralph Aron. And 10th is Alessio Lorandi. Now that's not a bad effort, is it, from 18th on the grid?
No.
Former karter who went straight from karts into Formula 3. Looked a bit out of his depth last year, but he drove really well at Pau to win the 3rd race, the Pau Grand Prix. And some great little battles raging on here just ahead of Lorandi as they come downhill, because Newey and Aron are absolutely nose to tail. Have a look at the Prema car, the Italian tricolor livery. They're just going through shot because you've got Aron on the back of Newey. Behind him is Lorandi. Then it's Nico Kari. Nikita Mazepin is up into 12th place now. So there are lots and lots of battles still to shake out of this, aren't there? Here they come. Newey is number 20. Ralph Aron is behind on a dive. Kari at the inside of Lorandi. Oh, no, you don't. And Kari's going to run wide. He does. He gets up the curb. Mazepin to the inside line. Ben Barnicoat right round the outside of Nikita Mazepin. Runs off the road, but he didn't have a lot of option there. Otherwise, they would have been contact. That was a brave effort by Barnicoat, who straight away has to go defensive, right up against the pit wall. Mazepin in the high-tech car slots in behind him as they run up the hill, but Ben Barnicoat gained, I think, 2 spots out of that as well, because he got past Antoine Hubert. So brave stuff. Ben Barnicoat on a mission after the pit stop.
So, as you say, lots of battles going on throughout the order, and whilst that's all going on, Callum Eilert is quietly going about his business and increasing by yet another 10th the margin.
Interesting, isn't it, to see how he's developed in his 2nd year in these cars.
And, may I say it, now, without that Red Bull over him, he seems to be going ever better.
Yeah, without the pressure. He can just get on and be a racing driver. And Callum doesn't come from a racing family as such, so he's doing it the hard way and having to plough his own furrow, to use the phrase. Now, more drama there. Ryan Tvita getting forced out wide. He was trying to find a way up past Mazepin and ends up losing a bit of momentum as they come down the hill. So there, Ryan Tvita up alongside 18, which is Peter Lee from the back of the grid. The order jumbled as a result of the earlier incidents of the pit stops. Right, meantime, back at the front, Callum Eilert makes his way over the timing line. Last time it was 1.7 seconds, and this time the gap is 2 seconds. It's looking very, very good indeed now.
May I do some judicial reporting for you? And that is track limits are being warned to drivers. Ben Barnicoat, also to Mikkel Jensen, and also Pedro Piquet, beg your pardon, also to Alessio Lorandi, and that was for the coming through that double apex last turn, wasn't it, that we saw?
Yes, indeed, and that was the part of the circuit where people were being guilty of exceeding track limits yesterday as well in qualifying.
Qualifying would suggest that you're going to get warned once, and then you're going to get properly told off, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it's... certainly in the UK, it's 3 observations before you get a warning flag, and after that the penalties start to come. But even so, as you see there, going out wide, Peter Lee giving a place back again, yes, you can't afford to keep doing it.
To reinforce what you're saying, the black and white flag is now going to be shown to Mikkel Jensen.
Right, so he's had the warning, now there's the flag. Right, okay. So the teams need to be communicating this to their drivers as well by saying, come on, you're under observation, keep off the runoff area. There are certain parts of the circuit where it's going to be more prevalent than others. That last corner is one, but you could argue, in fairness to Ben Barnicoat, it was an opportunistic move around the outside. The line he was on forced him that way, but the stewards might say you should have backed off and not done the move.
Okay, Barnicoat is another one that's being shown that black and white flag as well now, so we'll keep our eyes on that.
And also Antoine Hubert is now being warned about track limits. So I tell you what, Dave, tell us people that aren't from here on in. It'll save time.
Callum Eilert.
Right, marvellous. Well, he's 2.2 seconds up, and it proves you can do it without running off the road.
Absolutely, yes. But I accept what you were saying. I mean, Barnicoat really had no option, did he?
Yeah, exactly right. So Eilert leads. Now, Lance Stroll second. Yes, he'd like to win the race, but Lance, much more a mature driver this year, I suspect will be thinking championship here and accepting that he's going to get a good haul of points for second place, and that will help build the championship lead, because the championship opposition, which is effectively Maximilian Günther, is now in 3rd spot, back up ahead of Mikkel Jensen. but he's no real threat. There is Gunter, there is Jensen, who I think has had a moment to give Gunter the place back, but I'm still a bit mystified as to where the pace of Gunter's car has gone. But now look how far back Mikkel Jensen has dropped.
Yes.
5th place is still Nick Cassidy, having got himself up past George Russell.
Antoine Hubert, another one that's being warned about track limits and receiving the black and white flag. And this is going to be going on throughout the race, isn't it? Because presumably it's going to become ever harder to manage those track limits as the tyres, wear just a little bit further, the fuel load comes down, the cars, you were saying how that balances it out, perhaps, the fuel load versus the tyre wear, but it's not going to help in terms of track limits necessarily. 2.3 seconds the margin now between Eilert and Stroll.
And especially if you're in a battle as well, makes managing a little bit harder there. Up onto the curb goes Max Gunter. He's certainly pushing, isn't he? And in fact, last time around did a personal best lap, so he's on it. As you look at the race order there, scrolling through on the screen, 17 more minutes plus a lap still to run. But Callum Eilert leads the way. He's 2.3 seconds to the good now over Lance Stroll, who is doing personal best sectors. No surprise given, as we keep saying, the cars are getting lighter. But the best of anybody in the first sector has just been done by George Russell. Now, was that with a tow? Let's wait for another shot and see whether he's a bit closer to Nick Cassidy, because of course this is a circuit where you can get a bit of benefit from the slipstream. Sergio Sette Camera recovering for a spin, also improving in sectors. There is the Cassidy-Russell battle, so very much a tow was offered up, because they're nose to tail, turning their way now through Rauch, up onto the curb, down through that long right-hander they go up towards the Pirelli curve now. Is George Russell going to be able to fight back? Well, he has a look. Nick Cassidy sticks out his elbows and hangs onto the place, but still a bit of a surprise to see Cassidy struggling relative to the other Prema cars here, isn't it?
Yes, perhaps so. And this little battle between him and George Russell, really, really interesting to watch. Goodness me, already half distance in terms of duration, aren't we?
These two need to be careful, and way wide goes Nick Cassidy. That's going to be a finger wag, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if they carry on scrapping like this, David Beckman's going to be up with them. So they need to be careful that they don't delay themselves too much. Now, George Russell just wants to get past and get on with the job. Nick Cassidy wants him to go away, but for the moment, they are battling. They're delaying one another, and certainly Nick Cassidy was way wide coming out of the Rindt curve that time. Now, here is where the tow might just be possible for George Russell. It's a long climb uphill. He can just about get into the slipstream, similar to the effect we see at Spa on the run up towards Le Con, for example. And he does close, and he has a look to the inside. Is there a gap there? Not really. But if he stays up behind Cassidy, then he might be able to have a run going down towards turn 3. There is David Beckman, who in turn has got now Harrison Newey charging on behind him, and that gap has come right down. Newey up into 8th place, better than we've seen hitherto this year. Russell has a think about it, but can't really prise open the door there.
Quite rightly, Cassidy has been shown that black and white flag, and we saw that with our own eyes, didn't we? The camera picked that up absolutely perfectly. But these are fantastic battles, aren't they, that are continuing here. And this Beckman-Newey, which is all being argued over P7, isn't it? Wherever you look through the grid, there are things going on.
A quick Ben Barnicoat update. The British driver who's new to F3 this year. After his pit stop, Ben is in 12th place. Now, that's not great news because he's out of the points. Top 10 only score points, but it is impressive given how many cars he's had to fight away through from that pit stop. So we're not done yet, and I reckon he might, especially given how other people are squabbling, be able to gain more before the end of the race. Harrison Newey looking very rapid. He did the absolute best in Sector 1 on this lap, again, partly with a tow, and also being warned about track limits number 8, which is the car you can see there, David Beckman in super slow-mo. Now, where you've got that big sausage curb put in, you don't run too wide, but where it's just the painted tarmac, then it's more inviting for people to go wide, isn't it?
Ryan Tvita is another one that's receiving a warning too, so I think you're right. I think everyone in the pack, with the exception of Callum Eilert and Lance Stroll, have had a warning, haven't they?
Pretty much. It feels that way, doesn't it? Yeah. The leading group are the well-behaved people, and Ralph Aaron, I think, is another one, a bit lower down, 9th, and there's more strife there. Nico Kari, Alessio Lorandi, Ben Barnicoat, 3 wide. Whoa, this is brave. Barnicoat on the grass, and he has to give way to Kari, but he had no real option. And Alessio Lorandi is going to get up and past him as well here on the run down then towards turn 3. Barnicoat goes up into 11th. Nico Kari is the beneficiary 10th, but that was very forceful stuff, and Ben Barnicoat really given no option but to back out of it when he was squeezed onto the grass. I wonder what will be done from officialdom about that kind of driving. We see what happens about track limits, but that was decidedly robust on the part of Nico Kari.
Yes, I think you're right. Well, the moment I have any news to bring you, of course I will.
Right, okay. We'll head back to our court reporter in a moment. The leaders have gone through 3.4 seconds. Let's have another look at it. So Nico Curry round the outside of Alessio Lorandi. Lorandi runs wide, so Curry runs wide. So Barnicoat thinks good. Gap on the inside.
And he was far enough alongside, wasn't he?
I would say he was. But of course, initially the overtake was on Lorandi. Let's see if we can see it from this other angle. There, Curry has got no option. He's forced out wide. Opportunistic stuff by Ben Barnicoat. Good move that up the inside. And Curry moves across and keeps on coming. Yeah, I mean, Barnicoat was certainly alongside Lorandi, but the questionable move came from Curry, but he was ahead. We'll see what the officials decide to do about it as you look at the rest of the battles going on. This is still fifth, Nick Cassidy versus George Russell. And this one ain't done yet either, is it? You see how the nature of the Red Bull Ring as a circuit, with the slow corners, the fast bits, the undulations as well, does lend itself to an interesting race.
Very valid point that you were making is Cassidy's pace in comparison to the other Prema cars.
It's not there, is it?
No,
and it hasn't been all weekend. Now, whether that's down to lack of track knowledge, discuss, because some of them have been here before in F3 or in F4, but Nick new to the venue, as they work their way then now once more up through the Wörth corner on towards the end of the lap. The Rindt curve is next. Nick Cassidy versus George Russell, the high-tech car. It's Callum Ilott for Van Amersfoort leading the way. Lance Stroll 3.5 seconds back, but I'd still think he's doing the right sensible thing here and going for points in the championship. You
made the point earlier that, you know, more mature driver now, thinking of banking those points rather than going all out for the gap increasing would suggest that you're right, that's what he's doing.
And actually you can trace, I think, that back to this venue last year, because it was here that Lance Stroll started to get podium finishes on merit rather than people dropping out ahead of him, and the second half of the year was an awful lot stronger, and of course it had that win at Hockenheim in the season finale. And there, up the inside, goes George Russell, but he's going to go wide. Nick Cassidy, though, doesn't have the momentum to get back up the inside. So, again, it just suggests that Nick Cassidy's car is a little bit sluggish for whatever reason. He's in the slipstream. That's going to help him up on the outside down towards turn 3. He's got the longer line to run round, though, wheel to wheel, but George Russell will get it back on the inside. So Russell, once more, is up into 5th place.
Whilst all that was going on, Nico Curry has got a drive-through penalty for forcing another car off the circuit. So, just about been on top of everything, haven't you? To be fair.
It's early in the season.
Well, that was... Russell had been priming that and priming that and priming that, hadn't he?
Yeah, and here it is in replay. Look, and he's not actually on the tail. That was a very, very late dive up the inside, and Nick Cassidy was really powerless to repel that. So all of this means that Ben Barnicoat is about to get himself into the points, because if you take Nico Curry into the pit lane for the drive-through that you were mentioning, Dave, then that's going to put Ben Barnicoat into the top 10. Ilott, Stroll, Gunter, Jensen, Russell, Cassidy, Beckman, Newey, Aaron is the order, and Nico Curry is coming down the pit lane, so Ben Barnicoat is into 10th place.
So Nico Curry then, for pushing another car, gets that drive-through penalty. Looks pedestrian, doesn't it, going through the pit lane.
And somebody else that's under investigation now is Alessio Lorandi for failing to manage track limits. And this is where he failed to manage them, because it was him running wide that therefore forced Nico Curry even wider, that got Ben Barnicoat up the inside. In fairness, Nico Curry, I wonder whether he even saw Barnicoat, because the initial defence would have been against Lorandi. It was probably a bit of a surprise to find Barnicoat there. And again, in fairness, the mirrors in these cars aren't anywhere near as good as in your road car.
May I say, is this not an accomplished drive thus far from Callum Ilott?
Mighty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not put a wheel wrong, as far as we know, although there is this Damocletian investigation post-race that I'm still intrigued about. But there, a little bit sideways. Time to whisper the next part of the sentence, isn't it? We're praising his driving, and Callum has a little slide off the road at the Red Bull Mobile curve, coming up over the timing line now. The long, long climb up towards turn 1, past the Austrian flag painted on the curb, runs it up onto the sausage curbing on the outside line. But other than that one slide that we've seen, yes, it has been a very accomplished drive. He's 3.4 seconds to the good. And all the lessons learned of a previous season in Formula 3 now being put to very, very good use. And this will be the second win of the year if he hangs on in
Indeed. PK and Beckman are now getting the black and white flag for once again failing to manage those track limits. So as the grip comes down a bit, so it's getting ever harder seemingly. I think it's going to be the theme for the weekend, isn't it?
And as you're battling as well, and you end up in the dirty air, and that's going to affect the aero. That's another excuse for why people run off the road. So the super slow-mo of Callum Ilott over the rumble strip, even wider, just rub it up onto that sausage curb, but go over that with all 4 wheels. Not only are you too wide, but you've also done a bit of damage to the under tray of the car. The floor doesn't like it, but Callum Ilott stays the right side of it. And once more, Van Amersfoort proving to be a force to be reckoned with as a team. Absolutely. In the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Now, meanwhile, what other battles have we got to resolve before the end? There is Beckman, Newey and Aaron here, which is 7th, 8th and 9th. Ralph Aaron, the Estonian, who was very, very quick in the German and the Italian F4 championships last year. Was a race winner in the German championship, for example, at the Nürburgring, and has been a winner already in Formula 3. But he's been a bit up and down. Went off on the green flag lap in one of the races in Hungary, so he didn't even get to the start. But here, looking to try to gain ground.
I know we have only 7.5 minutes plus 1 lap left.
Oh,
my!
Huge accident, a huge off. Ryan Tveter had spun, Piquet is involved, there was another car that's airborne as well, and the race is being stopped straight away. Red flag shown, and Ryan Tveter was the catalyst for all of that because he had spun, and then out of nowhere came, I fear, Peter Lee. Looking at the order, the race is stopped, or race is suspended, I should say, rather than stopped. The red flags come out, but a race suspension. And a very, very quick call by the race director. Yes. Absolutely no argument about that. When he saw what we saw, straight away called for the race to be suspended. And Ryan Tveter will be understandably sore because that was a huge impact in the back of the car. But he'd just gone through the gravel, and then seemingly out of nowhere came what looked like being the car of, I think it was Peter Lee, behind. There's Ryan Tveter being helped away. Ryan didn't have a very happy time here last year, had a big off at the start of the weekend, and he will need some attention. As you can see, has to have a lie down after a huge whack in the back, but there are others that there will be some concern over. And the race suspended, and with about 7.5 minutes on the clock when the red flags came out, I can see down in Parc Fermé the boards being readied to, if required, marshal the cars in.
Right.
I'm just trying to do some quick computations as to whether we got to the 75% mark, but I'll keep you posted on that when I get a moment. But I'd like to see a replay of what happened to Ryan Tveter, not necessarily the scary bit until we know that drivers are safe, but the initial incident, it looked as though it was down at the Wirth corner, and it looked as though Tveter had come out of the gravel, and maybe with all the dust, he was unsighted by the pack behind. But that was a monster of an accident. So the race suspended. The cars are stopping on the grid until further instruction is given. And the race order, just to recap, was Callum Ilott in the lead, Lance Stroll second, Max Günther third, fourth, Mikkel Jensen fifth, George Russell sixth, Nick Cassidy seventh, David Beckman eighth, Harrison Newey ninth, Ralph Aaron 10th, Ben Barnicoat. They're the point scorers provisionally.
Just before we saw that horrible, horrible crash, I was about to mention that Callum Ilott, and we did see him run a bit wide, lost a couple of tenths. And, well, cars all parked up down there now. Race suspended following that crash, as David has said. The order of Ilott, Stroll, Günther, the 1, 2, 3. Now, what did we have at race suspension? What was the time left? 5 something?
Well, I said about 7.5 minutes.
Right.
They've done 17 laps. So I will await confirmation. But just looking out of our commentary box window, we can see the recovery team trying to get cars out of the way, but more importantly, make sure that drivers are okay. And after an airborne accident like that, it's the very gentle extrication process, but you can see the amount of debris all over the road. There was no way that the race could carry on through all of that, but the first concern is to make sure that drivers are okay. So the Carlin engineers have a look at the data and study their own backs on the monitor at the top. And Callum Ilott, an ex-Carlin driver, the man who led at the time of the suspension.
No restart.
Okay, so we have a result. Callum Ilott takes a second victory of the season. So a red flag after 17 laps, no restart. Confirmation of the result. Then Callum Ilott takes a second win of the year. And although perhaps it's not in the way that he would like, take nothing away from what, for my money, was a very, very good drive indeed.
Yes, and I think barring any real issues, he never looked like being troubled by Lance Stroll, who, as you quite rightly have said, Lance obviously, looking at it thinking, well, rather than go all out to try and catch him, I'm going to bank these points. It's a long championship, isn't it?
Ryan Tvita standing up again, which is
Yes,
good.
yes.
So the American driver, as I say, a bit shaken, understandably,
Well, just
having been hit in the
look
back.
at the car.
Yeah. I'm trying to find some of it. There really
Yeah.
is. There's not much left, is there? But the pack in a moment will be brought round into the pit lane. But, of course, what they don't want them to do is drive through the incident zone where there's all the debris.
Yes.
So the cars, for the moment, under part fairway conditions, being held on the grid. There is a gap through which the cars can come in the pit wall. Indeed, one of the race direction officials, Niels Wittich, has just arrived to open the gate. Yeah, and so the cars can be driven now off into the pit lane. So a scary accident brings the race to a premature end, and a shame because, as we've been making the point all the way through, there were some good battles going on and some good racing. Poor old Ryan Tvita really has been in the wars because, of course, he was involved in the first lap drama up at turn 2 that was the cause of the safety car that we had, and then ends up in a sizable accident at the very end. So the leader had done 17 laps, but the result is taken from the penultimate lap before the red flag under the regulations, the penultimate lap before the red flag, so it'll go back to 15. And the cars now are being waved into the pit lane, where the beautifully arranged Hankook boards and now have to be moved out of the way because, of course, the lock on a Formula 3 car isn't outstanding.
No, it's not brilliant, is it?
No, so they're now at 90 degrees to where they would normally be. But anyway, the FIA technical team is there to receive the top 3 cars, which is what it requires. And everybody else now being waved, as you can see, off the track. But what you can't see from that shot is that just to the left of the Aral blue gantry, under the Decra signage, there's the pit garage 0 that they will go through back into the general parc fermé, the other side in the paddock. And there you are, the cars just being waved through the pit lane. So the drivers will make their way to the podium. Callum Ilott, Lance Stroll, Maximilian Günther. The fastest lap had been done on lap 17 by George Russell, but that, I suspect, if you take the result back to lap 15, won't count. You don't get a point for it anyway. There's only pride at stake, but just one of those little quirks that the fastest lap of the race wasn't in the race. Because, yes, the results just confirmed itself at 15 laps. Ilott, Stroll, Günther, Jensen, Russell, Cassidy, Beckman, Newey, Aaron, Barnicoat, the top 10. And the fastest lap of the race, I'll confirm as soon as we get an opportunity. The one that's benefited out of that, not for points, admittedly, but for a position, is Nico Kari. I'll explain why in a moment. Now, this is Tvita. It was the Verth corner, I was right. He goes through the gravel. He's back on the track. And Peter Lee is just unsighted. Straight into the back. Corkscrews in the air. Piquet very nearly goes over as well, as he had a car knocked into his path. That is a monster. That's a huge, huge coming together, isn't it?
And as you say, it was dust, wasn't it? There was...
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Peter... It wasn't a complete blind spot, I wouldn't have thought, in the way that, an engine detonating just covers the road in white smoke, for example.
Right.
But at the speed you're going...
yes.
And also, how far ahead can you see at that part of the circuit? You've just gone through a left, you flick right, there's dust. At the last moment, you might see a car. And you certainly don't expect it to be stationary.
No.
You might think slow-moving car, but Pedro Piquet's okay, walking away, but obviously shaken. Ryan Tvita, we've seen. But Peter Lee, I mean, that was just astonishing. And the fact that the car, as I say, corkscrewed in the air, and Pedro Piquet as well, as we saw in the replay, came close to rolling because his line was suddenly affected by a car being punted into him, into his path. Yeah,
nasty.
Scary stuff. The stewards may want to talk to the drivers about that, but what's reassuring this weekend is that once again, Emanuele Pirro is one of the stewards, and he last year proved to be a great asset to the championship in talking to drivers and about awareness of other people on the track and helping to reduce the number of incidents that the championship had suffered early part of last year. So, after the race suspension turns into a stoppage. Callum Ilott, the winner from Lance Stroll. Mats Günther third, Mikkel Jensen is fourth, George Russell is fifth, Nick Cassidy sixth, David Beckman seventh, Harrison Newey eighth, Ralph Aaron is ninth, and Ben Barnicoat is 10th. I was going to tell you that Nico Kari had benefited out of all of that, because when the result was at 15 laps, he was in 13th place, but we've now had a result at 16 laps.
Right. Which
is the result, that would have been the last lap completed by everybody, but I thought the regulation said it was the penultimate lap.
It had to go back one.
Even further, yes. Yeah. The penultimate lap before the red flag, not the last lap. So, anyway, when I get a chance, we'll dive into the regulations. It doesn't matter for points, actually. It's a kind of academic question, because Nico Kari wouldn't have been in the top 10 either way, but it confirms our top 3. And Callum Ilott, race winner for the second time this year. Lance Stroll is there. Maximilian Günther with him as well.
First time I didn't get the...
Harrison Newey, I think I'm right in saying, will be there as one of the rookies. Yes, but David Beckman is the winning rookie. And the third of them is going to be Ralph Aaron. So drivers then making their way to the podium.
Yes, saw them in the preps area behind the podium. We can see Manfred Sandbickler from Hankook will be doubtless part of the trophy presentation team. We can see that from our commentary box. You're looking at a shot down from turn 2 of the Red Bull Ring circuit. Blessed with glorious weather this weekend, that's for sure. Completely different to what greeted the event last year.
Well, on the Sunday, certainly. We've got the time at 20 past 11 local time. 2:30 is when the second race starts. You can see the grid being a bit depleted, can't you?
Yes.
Unfortunately.
So then that was a shot of the drivers in preps then for the podium ceremony. And again, from our commentary position, we can see that the final stages of getting the podium in order, ready to receive them, has been done. Just take a few moments before the drivers are out on that podium. So Ilott, Stroll and Günther will see on the 1, 2, 3 in just moments from now.
And there is what's left of Peter Lee's car. So the good news is that Peter is out of it, and that is finished, I would have thought, as a chassis. That I can't imagine, even if Peter is 100% fit for the weekend, I can't imagine that that's repairable.
No.
Because there is fundamentally the chassis damage, because the force with which that landed I would have thought, done for that car.
It was an extraordinary vault, wasn't it?
Well, he would have been almost flat out, wouldn't he? Because it's a quick corner. If you do have a lift for it, you'd be back on the throttle coming out of it, and he accelerated into a stationary object, effectively. Rips the front off it, flies through the air, crash lands. What it does prove is the strength of a modern-day racing car.
Yes.
Because it is recognisable just as a Formula 3 racing car. I know that the appendages have come off, like the wheels and a bit of bodywork, but given the ferocity of the accident, it's stood up to it well, hasn't it?
Yes, the integrity of it is remarkable.
So the drivers probably, as much as being keen to see the result, keen to find out that all their colleagues are okay.
Absolutely.
And we can certainly account for Pedro Piquet and for Ryan Tvita, we've seen out of the cars. The medical team making sure that Peter Lee is extricated slowly and gently, because the last thing you need after an incident like that is to jar the neck or the back and make life even more difficult. So let's just recap that top 3. For third, it was Prema Power Team's Maximilian Günther. He had fallen to 4th at one stage, but clawed his way back into the mix. Lance Stroll extends the championship lead, then outscoring Günther. He takes 2nd place with another good, sensible drive, keeping out of trouble and banking the points. But Callum Ilott is the man who comes through to secure a 2nd race win of the year. And for Callum Eilert and Van Amersfoort Racing, barely a wheel wrong did he put. I think there was one slide we saw, but other than that, the British driver in great form this morning, and he scores victory in this, the first race of the weekend. It's the 10th thus far this year, the 10th round of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, and Callum Eilert then winning in the end by 3.4 seconds, the margin that he had over the opposition. Well, the trophies are on the podium and the officials are ready. The medical team will bring drivers back to the medical centre so they can be checked over, made sure that all is good. And the FIA officials, with absolutely no hesitation after what we had seen as a big accident, stopping the race and making sure that everybody was okay and that there was no further jeopardy to anybody. Right, I think we're just about good to go. Van Amersfoort's going to be represented on the podium as well as the winning team. Harrison Newey will be there as one of the rookie drivers, but Callum Eilert is the man for the overall top step. This is what it does to the championship. Lance Stroll now 16 points up on Max Günther, who's only 2 ahead of Callum Eilert, who in turn is 9 up on George Russell, who is 7 ahead of Nick Cassidy, who is ahead of Ben Barnicoat, Joel Eriksson, Ralph Aaron, Mikkel Jensen and Sergio Sette Camara. The drivers then make their way onto the podium here at Spielberg. The top step for the second time this year goes the way of Callum Eilert, and he is all smiles, understandably. Hankook cap adorns the head. Van Amersfoort Racing represented as the winning team. Then for second place, Lance Stroll, now part of the Williams F1 operation. One of their junior drivers. He makes his way to the second step. Lance has also done some sports car racing in the winter at Daytona, adding to his CV. And third place, Maximilian Günther steps onto the podium. And it is a British winner here this morning in Austria. Callum Eilert, for the second time this year, is a winner in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. He was there or thereabouts last season in his rookie year, moving out of karting into Formula 3. But this year, he looks a very accomplished driver indeed. And Manfred Sandbichler from Hankook steps forward to present the winner's trophy. Van Amersfoort victorious, but Prema Power Team applauds. Harry Tinknell, who used to be in Formula 3, but these days is a WEC driver. He steps forward to hand over the trophy to Van Amersfoort. And Harry, who we've seen in sports cars, both prototypes and GT for Nissan. Good to see him here, seeing some of his old mates. And as the second place trophy is given to Lance Stroll, now Max Günther takes his trophy as well. The drivers will all get together on the top step in a moment for the photographs. Then the Henkel Trocken is at their feet, ready to be sprayed if they feel in the mood. And it might be that
they probably don't.
They might be a bit subdued this morning. And also bearing in mind that they don't have a huge window to get themselves ready for their second race. You can imagine the teams toiling away now. But like I said, I think we could be looking at an amended grid with 1 or 2 gaps on it for the second race of the day. And the drivers, and I'm tempted to say quite rightly, elect to leave the podium, and they can do their celebrations in a better frame of mind later on in the day. So a lively race we had. A shame that it had to be stopped, but you can understand the reasons for it. And the drivers then now in the medical centre just to make sure that all is well. The Red Bull Ring really is a marvellous circuit. I know that it's not like the old Österreich Ring, but for a modern day venue and all the extra safety requirements that are needed these days, it scrubs up very, very well indeed. And it's a good venue for the fans as well, because thanks to the altitude and the undulations, go and watch from almost any of the key vantage points and you can see a lot of the track.
Absolutely, yes. It does provide those excellent viewing facilities, and the facilities in general for this track are absolutely superb, aren't they?
Yeah. It's the replay of Ryan Tveter. So Tveter was wrong. He got it way out of line. He was too quick, ran off the road. Through the gravel bed he goes. back onto the circuit. Joel Eriksson gets through, and then way up on the curb, Peter Lee into the back, a complete corkscrew. He crash lands. Pedro Piquet goes underneath. This from another angle. I mean, Piquet, his line suddenly had a punted Twitter in the way.
Yes.
But wait for the impact. This was the first shot we saw. That shot actually illustrates the dust, doesn't it? Because you couldn't see Peter Lee until it was too late.
No.
And by the same token, Peter Lee could not see Twitter until it was too late. And thankfully lands the right way up. But the impact when that car landed will have certainly knocked the stuffing out of Peter, to say the very least. And Ryan Twitter, with the adrenaline kicking in, gets out of the car and runs away. And then...
Wasn't feeling so good then, was he?
No. Understandably, a little bit sore. So we wish all of them well. And we'll bring you more news later in the day about the result of the incidents and drivers' well-being. But for now, there is the rookie podium taking place here at the Red Bull Ring. 2:30 local time is when we will have the second race. The third is tomorrow morning, incidentally, as part of the race weekend here, which brings Formula 3 and the DTM and Carrera Cup Deutschland together. But a few concerned faces in the pit lane after the incident that stopped this morning's race. So, Callum Islet is a winner for the second time this year. There's more Formula 3 action coming up from the Red Bull Ring later in the day. For now, from Dave Richardson and David Addison, bye-bye.